Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and to, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all this information. Obviously, we break down articles from multiple news sources every day. And frankly, some of them are very, very good information, and some of them only love to say that there is a problem and do not offer a solution. And that's what we're all about here, is you guys is keeping people in business. It's why I proudly fly this American flag behind me every single day, because A, America's the greatest country on earth, and B, I'm living my American dream, and I want to see each and every one of you guys live your American dream as well. Got a very special guest for you guys today. This guy has forgotten more about ocean freight than most of us even know, and I'm going to bring him up here in a second. But I also got some housekeeping stuff here, you guys. I'm going to be doing my live show in a couple of weeks from the TIA conference. Technovations is going to be out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And also, I got a brand new podcast that dropped this morning with Matt Silver of Arrive Logistics. And we talked all about cross-border freight going in and out of Mexico. Obviously, you guys, all my content is available over on the Coffee with the Freight Coach podcast platform, which is on iTunes and Spotify. Just do your boy a solid and subscribe and share that stuff out. Tyler Burkhofer, good morning. Good to see you, my man. Pat Green, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Tim Perkins, good morning and happy Friday. Erica Hamilton, happy Friday. And before we jump up, you guys got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub, vhubapp.com. Whether you're a broker, carrier, or shipper alike, we all need access to trailers at some point in time. And on VHub, it's a seamless transaction for you entirely. You know, and if you're a small fleet right now, you should never have to shut your operation down if you have a trailer in the shop or anything like that. With that being said, the best part about what they have, you guys, to get paid to do this. So what they're working with right now, Paragould, Arkansas to Orting, Washington, you get paid $15.50 to do that. That's on top of the freight that you can load out in the back of that trailer. That's just a great way to put on some additional revenue right now. San Diego, California, going to Selma, Texas, $750 to do that. They also have San Diego to Laredo, Texas. You get paid $600 to do that. That's a dry van over there. And then they also have a reefer down in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is just outside of where my guest here is today, going up to Aquasanse, New York, and you get paid $1,500 to do that for that reefer. So again, you guys hit them up, vhubapp.com. My friends Xavier Campos and Stacy Steen, they'll be in the audience. You guys hit them up. And with that being said, I got to give my man a shout out here, Mr. Steve Ferreira, coming back to talk about ocean freight. What's up, man?
Hey, Chris, it's so great to be here with you. I am stoked to have such a great leader like you, giving such great information out to the crowd here on LinkedIn. So thanks for doing what you do.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. And, you know, frankly, Steve, it's just like, I've just gotten to the point with all of this where it's like, at what point are we just going to stop talking about problems and focus on all except the fact that there are some issues in the world. It's not just right now. We're always going to have problems. But how do we work through them? Because again, if you're not going to work through them, your competition is, and then all of a sudden you're going to be out of business.
Yeah, you know, Chris, I think there are so many three-dimensional problems right now that unfortunately we're only getting one-dimensional answers on. And, you know, I see it all the time. I'm very impressed with the amount of thought leaders that are becoming more active on LinkedIn to try to help the BCO community. On the other hand, I'm starting to see the same old kind of, say with peace and love, tired arguments about, well, the ocean rates are dropping and, everything seems to be kind of a historical perspective, but nobody's really saying what BCOs can do now to ring the alarm box and say, hey, we got a problem. So I'm really glad to be here to help partially contribute to that.
No, exactly. And, frankly, the reason people don't provide solutions, Steve, is because they don't know. And that's why they're not providing them, because they have no clue. And it's easier to sit there and point at a data source trending in one direction or the other and put your opinion out there than it is to provide actual tangible feedback on how to work with it, because they don't know. And that's my big gripe with a lot of this stuff is it's like, don't report on something if you don't know how to fix it. Like, and then anybody's gonna be like, oh, as a journalist, that's not your problem. There's plenty of journalists out there that do provide both perspectives. So you can't make that argument. That's an invalid argument to me.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have in my neck of the woods in the global logistics, especially the ocean theater, is that unfortunately, Chris, because of the pandemic and events that happened before, after, and during, and even now, people rely so much on the indices that are available out there. And there are so many competing ones. The bottom line is we get index blindsided and we start to lose. It's almost like a pilot, you're learning how to fly a plane. They put a hood over your head, to test your orientation. I think that's what's happening quite a bit within ocean, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. It makes complete sense, man. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Vitaly, I have no idea why it's so hard to get in touch with parcel carriers in Chicago. You would think people would want to make money, especially knowing who Vitaly is and what he does. And I'm not going to say that, you guys, and don't fucking blow up his inbox with that. But again, you guys, there's work out there if you want it. Sunny Sharma, good fucking morning to you, sir. Cody Miller, good fucking morning, freight enthusiasts. And then we got a new Ben Chen. What's up, my man? Good morning to you. Let's start off. Let's start out with the driver recruitment article, Steve, and then we're going to save the remaining part of the show for all the ocean freight. And this first one comes from ttnews.com, you guys, and it's driver recruitment strong despite uncertain economy. The trucking industry's push to recruit drivers is as strong as ever, despite signs that it may be softening. Supply chain talent has been short in supply. That's kind of funny. Supply chain talent has been short in supply for some time. Sorry, a dad joke. Said Sylvia Thompson, who's a vice president of consumer brands, retail, and distribution practices at NTT Data Services. The dropout of a large portion of the labor force over the pandemic just amplified it. Overall, we need to grow the talent pool. We need to attract new people into the supply chain fields and develop them. Just waiting for the time to come will not work. God, it's weird. It's like a morning show host has been saying that for fucking 8 months now. But anyways, what do I know? The 2022 third-party logistics study found on September 19th that 78% of shippers and 56% of 3PLs reported the labor shortages have impacted their supply chain operations. Everybody from hourly workers, such as pickers and packers, to licensed workers and everything else. Third-party companies are taking these shortages much more seriously because their business does not exist without talent. I think anybody can say that their business doesn't survive without talent. So, what are your thoughts on this? Because my thing is, Steve, is we need to do a better job of recruiting more talent to the industry. We need to get away from the old way of doing things of posting it on Indeed. We got to get interactive with our stuff. We got to utilize social media. We got to where is the next generation of people on? They're on their cell phones. They're on social media. So why isn't there a strong marketing push to attract that next generation of talent through that?
It's an age-old question, and I was thinking about this as I looked at LinkedIn and looking at the number of new people that came into, say, logistics, right? And then you think about, okay, well, they have to employ drivers and they have to pick up containers, and then there's detention and demurrage fees, and are the new people understanding the old-fashioned charges and why are these charges happening? And so I think it's a cycle that really, the shortage of in some cases qualified personnel, and the fact that we really haven't had in many cases strong training methods and processes to go through, because everyone's kind of been hands on deck, and I see this all the time, and I get a lot of this lately in the last 6 months on ocean freight detention and demurrage, getting billed by being paid by the trucking companies. And I think that, then it's also paid by the importer. So, you've got just really a kind of a shit show of invoice control. And it comes down to strong people, right? It comes down to quality people. And I don't think the industry as a whole, whether you're in trucking or global logistics or ocean, when I grew up, and in the industry back in the 80s, I went through what would be considered the IBM of training programs at Malcolm McLean's company, US Lines. And so, believe it or not, Chris, we were even schooled on how to answer the telephone. I mean, I'll never forget one of the first things I had to do is answer the telephone a specific way. You know, good morning, this is Steve Ferreira from United States Lines. How may I please help you? I mean, I had to go through that whole thing before the customer could say hello. And now it's like, you know, you pick up the phone and say, yeah. So it's a whole hodgepodge of opportunity. But when I see the issues in front of us today, how, you know, we're kind of splintered, I also see incredible opportunity.
Oh, I'm right there with you. So like, man, this is one thing, because I love the fact that that's the way you were trained, because that's the little things that a lot of people overlook. And it's doing the little things right consistently is what I feel builds a successful company.
Sure.
A lot of people look for that quick fix of like the bright shining, oh, like when I have this, but no, what I feel like it is doing the little things right time and time again. And as a broker, in my opinion, it's like, man, it goes down to, yes, it is answering the phone in a certain type of way. It is entering load logs into your TMS the exact same way every single time, repeatedly. It's doing that stuff. It's doing the little things. That's what's going to build out a successful business. And I think like a lot of it is tied into how if they're skipping out on that, like they're going to skip out on ways of thinking outside of the box on recruiting talent. And, you know, Michelle LeBlanc, she brings up some good points here about trucking companies aren't, how can we hire younger drivers right now? Should we be in TikTok? Like those conversations aren't being had. And yes, you should probably be on TikTok is her point. And, you know, Michelle owns Drop and Hook Content, which you guys should look into that if you're looking for a company to align with that can help you guys out in creating your social media presence. Michelle's one of the best in the business. And I just think that, you know, again, it's like, if you're having trouble recruiting people for a specific role, is it you, the company? And that's what I think a lot of people need to look at is, what can I do differently as a company? It's not that there's not qualified candidates out there. I think there's more than qualified people out there who want to work and who want to put in the effort, but what can you do differently as a company? It's not the fucking candidate. Just like it's never like, stop pointing in every fucking direction, but right here, what can I do differently?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that one of the things that prevails both on the trucking, the ocean, the air, and the global logistics genre, right, is everything we do is an art and a science. And I think it's so often forgotten that you can just bring in somebody new and give them a handbook and say it's 1, 2, 3, because it's the little things, right? It's the little tiny, one of my mentors once said, it's just a small degree turn. That's the difference between failure and success.
Yeah.
And I think we need more mentorship, you know, at the senior level. And I don't think our newer employees are necessarily getting the full kind of hit of training within the cadre of services that, when you get onboarded, right, there's a certain thing you have to go through. I mean, you know, great services like the things that you're doing in the industry are probably, you know, you're the poster child for, I think, how to bring somebody up. Same with me on Ocean, but there's only a couple of us to go around. And I think that the industry's continuing to have some failure because, you know, we're hitting these potholes because we're not well trained.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. That article, you guys, ttnews.com, driver recruitment strong despite uncertain economy. All right. Let's talk ocean freight, Steve.
All right.
Let's go into this. Ben has made a statement of ocean freight is in a free fall now, but carriers blank sail a lot. USWC probably in the bottom, but it could drop more. We'll get into our first article here from the JOC, you guys, JOC.com. Geopolitical disruptions, a rising threat to freight shippers. The sense of helplessness that shippers and transportation providers may have felt while navigating what's approaching 3 years of pandemic-induced disruption pales in comparison to how rising geopolitical threats potentially affecting U.S.-China trade could upend containerized supply chain. The last 32 months of disruption to U.S. supply chains have added costs in the form of record freight rates, higher inventory, and the need for pricier expedited options. U.S. imports are under pressure to diversify sourcing away from China like never before. Although it's not yet showing in the numbers, containerized U.S. imports from China hit a record high in 2021, rising 13.9% to 11.8 million with 42.4% of all imports sourced from China, the same percentage as in 2008, according to Peers, a sister product of JOC with S&P Global. Globalization is certainly not dead, but it's undergoing retooling as shippers reassess sourcing risks to accelerate their sourcing diversification, according to Bruce Jones, who is a geopolitical expert. So what are your thoughts on a lot of this stuff, Steve? Like, what
well, first off, I'm glad Ben's watching. I don't know him, and it's great to have someone like Ben with the ocean freight question that he asked. So I'll say this: I'll practice my Mandarin. Ben, ni hao ma, wo hen gao xing kan jian ni. He'll get that. So Chris, what I think's happening here is that we're starting to see a little bit of a fracturing, right, of, I think, the global supply chain. I think one of the things I picked up on recently, and it's a trend that we're not seeing a lot in the press on, and I think it's really important to talk about, is actually you're seeing two things, right? So everyone likes to repost things like, okay, Vietnam's the new China, or Mexico, we should, onshore there or offshore there. And I think that what's one of the trend lines that we're starting to see that's really interesting is with the extreme strength of the dollar, right? In, for example, the UK, Europe, we're actually seeing opportunities where, in theory, a European importer here in the US that's buying from Europe could de facto get free ocean freight. And here's how I explain that. It's really an interesting storyline, and I think your audience would appreciate it. So if you look at, I did a study on the value of certain shipments. This one particular importer brings in, say, synthetic turf, that you might find in a professional stadium. So materials like that. So it's priced in euros, and so because of the strength of the dollar, right, what he purchased the product for in a container lot a year ago, he might now be saving $4,000, $5,000 on the product cost alone, right? And if you look at the price of, say, ocean freight from Europe to the US, yeah, it's still relatively high. It's come down like other lanes, but you might be paying $5,000 or $6,000. So you could say de facto he's offset his landed costs, and in some ways is getting it's wooden nickels, but in some ways is getting the ocean freight, at a highly subsidized amount. Now, if you factor in, for example, let's say he doesn't audit, right, which is my specialty. So if he goes in and he says, okay, I want to look at all the sins that happened during Containergeddon, right, the post-pandemic period, where he was paying $20,000 a container. Now he's getting refunds, in the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 range that he can offset as well. So, I did a big post on LinkedIn, or I did an audio show on LinkedIn, and I talked about free ocean freight, right? Where it's to the point now where you can use a lot of different techniques to offset your ocean. And I think there's a huge revenge factor now that's going on. I think this is, again, another unwritten rule or unspoken rule that, think about it, 2018, 19, you had importers paying $1,000, then pandemic, $20,000, and now we're back down to $2,000, $3,000. So we have a huge chunk where there's almost like a mobilization on the beneficial cargo owner's part to do something about it. So they've got many different tools in their quivers right now. Unfortunately, Chris, it's really, really, really hard to break away from China, which is everyone's kind of, kryptonite.
Yeah. Why is there such an emphasis? Because I honestly can't rack my brain around this. Why is there such an emphasis that everything's falling apart when the drop from the cataclysmic rise of prices inevitably happened? Like, why is there such an emphasis on, look at this, the prices are falling apart, that must mean that the ocean freight is falling? Like, I don't understand that, because, like, again, if you pull data and what you're talking about there, like, an average price of container was around $3,000 to $4,000 historically, pretty much every year, right?
Much less, actually. I mean, in some cases right now, rates, and that's the Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but it's only because people writing about this and involved in it, engaged in it, they might have moved from writing about, I don't know, fashion, right, into logistics. And again, I love all the writers I work with in the trade. I'm not saying it's, I'm picking on one person, but I think the issue is this: is that I remember clear as day. I still remember the day working at my desk and seeing a bunch of containers come in for $1,000 for one of my customers back in 2018. And now they're coming in at 3,000 and 4,000. I'm thinking, shoot, that's 3 times what they were paying in 2018. But they were paying a year ago 25,000. So I think it's containerization is really, really misunderstood, not only by the media, but obviously by the general public. So I think that and the other factor too that's happening as we speak is these importers, to avoid paying $25,000 rates, sign contracts for 10,000 or 8,000 or 7,000, and these are physical signed contracts. And now the rates are actually 2,000 in the spot rate environment. So there's a whole X factor in terms of what to do about contracts, legal contracts that were signed, and many people are just saying, well, we're going to dump them because of these obscene market conditions. So very much a work in motion here.
I completely understand. And I think that, again, this is like my whole thing with, from the overall topic of the geopolitical disruption that's out there. Like, again, like this is a lot of behind my sentiment of like, this is why I want us as a country to be self-sufficient, and we trade because we can, not because we have to, is because like we should never be at risk as a developed nation, as the greatest nation on earth, of having anything shut off due to a conflict that has nothing to do with us. And I think like that's what we're seeing out there. And then again, with the whole China-Taiwan situation and all of that stuff, I think like for me, it's like, we should never be at risk of not having something because of what goes on. And then, same thing with the shutdowns and everything else, and what caused that, and that bullwhip effect that naturally followed is just like, I just want people to look at it from a different perspective here. And then again, talking about the pricing things, like the overemphasis on rates falling. And again, and this is just a complete transition into the next article that we're going to be talking about, you guys. It's another one from the JOC, and how ocean rates may slide to pre-pandemic levels by the end of the year. It was only a matter of time, though, in my opinion, Steve, that this shift was going to come back. Like, again, nothing can stay at an elevated level. Like, yes, as much as gas prices suck right now, it's not going to stay there forever. But if it does stay there forever, we're all screwed, But again, I think like with ocean rates kind of coming back, like it's just back into a cycle. Like this is what happens, you guys. Like rates just don't stay elevated forever. It can't sustain.
Well, it's like inflation, right? I mean, it's the same thing, right? You can't look at buying a new home. It's the same thing with interest rates. Nothing that gets elevated can ever be a party forever. It's very much a euphoric scenario where we think that this is it, and we're all going to make money. Now, you look at somebody like myself. I make money if the rates are high or if they're low. I mean, I'm trying to find areas for clients, so that's another issue. But I think right now the issue is that one other thing that's not being talked about is that geopolitical and political and non-ocean related events can improve the rate structure. For example, we don't know for sure. We haven't heard a lot recently about ILWU labor contract, which is still not signed. Now, hypothetically, if that dovetailed to a bad scenario, I would expect to see ocean spot rates jump up dramatically, as I might if there were potentially a rail strike, but maybe not to the same extent as a longshore issue. The reality, Chris, is that I just did a study on this yesterday. In September of 2022, just last month, there were 2.5 million containers that came in. The month before that, 2.7 million. So we lost only 200,000. It's not like, all of a sudden the sky fell and volume fell over this cliff that everyone's talking about. There's no question imports are down. At the same time, as I said in my earlier remarks, clients right now are filled with zeal and a newfound way to how do they fight back with what they went through over the last 2 years. And then the wild card factor is something else I wrote about on LinkedIn, where America is such a great country, and it's the only country I know where a year ago we had charter ships with 500 containers of Halloween decorations, right? And now those same decorations are half price at Target or Walmart because the inventory was misjudged. We're all human, right? All of these procurement guys, you think, hey, I'm Walmart, I'm Target, I've got the best procurement and buying guys in the world and gals. I've got the best software that tells me exactly what SKUs I need. And the whole thing went to hell. And so I think that, to blame it on the pandemic, sure. I think the pandemic stimulated, and again, forgive the word stimulus, because that's what ended up, I think, fostering this when the government gave the American people the stimulus to help get through COVID. But we don't know the future. Right now, we just know that rates are in a downtrend. It's natural that they would be going in that direction. The carriers are trying to do everything they can with deferring sailings. I would also probably tell your audience that we could probably expect to see some older container ships scrapped, that's sold to Bangladesh shipyards for breaking them up into the steel components. And that does have a way to naturally balance the ebb and flow of tonnage out there. It's just something not talked about much. So, but those are some of the things, hotspots that I'm looking at as it relates to where rates are going next.
That's interesting, man. I see. And again, you guys, this is why I have Steve come on here and talk about this stuff. Because you see a lot of this in the news. And frankly, in my opinion, the JOC is one of my favorite news sources, entirely. And they have a ton of great information. And, and that's what, because in the article about the rates here, that we're talking about and referencing here is, because it talks about the downside of the risks, the renegotiations, and everything else that are going to be going on. And it's just a lot of unknown. We can't predict the future. All right. No matter what data, no matter what algorithm, no matter what chart you want to point at, I think, to your point, Steve, of these retailers have the smartest buyers on earth purchasing for their organizations. And a lot of them got it wrong.
Right.
And
right.
The fact of the matter is things are going to happen, but that doesn't change what is my underlying message all the time is we need to find a solution. We need to find we need to execute upon this stuff, because there will still be freight moving. There will still be a lot of stuff that's going to be happening on in the world. And that doesn't mean you take a step back because there's some uncertainty. My biggest piece of advice to anybody right now, go on an offensive assault. Get out there and just be there, because so many people, when it gets hard, when it gets a little bit off course, when it change is the biggest deterrent for most people in life, Steve, as you know. Now is the time to dig your heels in and be there in front of your customers, because most people aren't.
Yeah, just my closing words. I know we're getting close to the end of the segment, but the one thing I consistently see here is that if you're a BCO, don't retreat, as Chris said. Don't just rely on hearing what's happening in the market from your ocean vendors. Network, use LinkedIn, use me, use Chris. We all know people. You can't let the fox tell you what the next moves are. You've got to be the proactive chicken that gets out of that coop. So that's my best advice.
No, it's great advice. And, as always, you guys, all the articles that we break down on this show, all the links are put up on the Freight Coach YouTube channel, as well as the Coffee with the Freight Coach podcast, where the audio only version of this will be replayed here shortly after the show. And again, you guys, I just want to do your own research on this. Read multiple media sources, data sources, look at all of this stuff as a whole picture. There's not one organization has all the answers, no matter what they might want to market and put out there and put out a narrative. Not one person has all the answers for this. And frankly, we got to come up with solutions, and collectively as an industry, we got to get better with a lot of this stuff. We got to take what these last couple of years have done, notice the holes in the game, and then fix them moving forward, because we're the greatest industry on earth. And that's what we'll say for today. So Steve, how does anybody reach out more? Follow Steve on LinkedIn, you guys, if you're not already. Please follow Steve Ferreira on LinkedIn. He's my go-to for all things ocean. So how does anybody reach out to you though, otherwise though?
LinkedIn is great. Steve F at oceanaudit.com, or just go to oceanaudit.com. And I'm glad to help any BCO recover thousands and millions in ocean demurrage and detention costs. Thanks so much, Chris, as always, for having me on today. You're doing great work for our community.
I appreciate that, man. And that's it for today, you guys. It's the Freight Coach Morning Show. We're the top morning show in transportation. And just do me a favor. If you guys saw value in this, share the show, because if you guys see value in it, your network's going to see value in it as well. I'll be back on Monday. I appreciate you guys all so much, and we'll be